The only things that Rebbe wrote in his journal is this conversations with the Friedrich Rebbe. I would gamble, I would bet money that there's many, many things that the Rebbe did not include in the journal, not only because he didn't have time, but because the Rebbe knew that that journal would one day be found and made public. Und nicht alles darf man wissen. The Shmua goes, and I never met Mr. Shmua, and he's a very evasive fellow, and even if you meet him, you can't know if you can believe him. The rumors are that the Rebbe and the Friedrich Rebbe spent every Thursday night together in America. Spent every Thursday night together and spent every Motzei Shabbos together. Verbringen ganze Nacht. Rabbi Yossi Goldstein, Yossi Goldstein, describes how he borrowed the Rebbe's typewriter on a Thursday night because he wanted to write a letter to somebody about Chassidus. And the Rebbe said to him, "Du darfst doch morgen aufstehen zum Seder. You have to get more to the Seder." So B'meila, the Rebbe says to him, "When you finish typing the letter, you'll put the typewriter outside my office and you'll go to sleep." Anyway, so Rabbi Yossi Goldstein hat getracht a Chassidische Machshava that what he's going to make the Ramash bend down to pick up the typewriter. So he's waited for him. He sat down on the steps across from the door of the Rebbe's room with the typewriter next to him. The Rebbe came down very late. It must have been 4 or 5 in the morning, and he was sitting on the steps. Und hat eingedremmelt. He had fallen asleep. The Rebbe walks past him, sort of leaps over the typewriter and picks up the typewriter, and he's sleeping. So he wakes up and he sees that the Rebbe is taking the typewriter. He describes this in the gem. So he wanted to take it for the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, "I made up with you that you're going to go to sleep because you have to get up for Seder. Why did you not listen to me? Why did you sit here all night?" Anyway, so there became now a tug of war. Who's going to carry the typewriter into the room, into the Rebbe's office? So they carried it together. But the Rebbe spent many, many hours with the Friedrich Rebbe. There's no record of that. There is none. When the Rebbe came to America, the only real Rishima you have from America is the Rishima of the Estaltus of the Rebbe's Nishtenes Sorah. And the reason I know the reasons, but in Das Tach, the reason the Rebbe wrote that Rishima, because that's a Rishima of Pasha Halachu Minik. The Rebbe wrote down the Hanhagas of Avelis, that the Rebbe was not around when the Friedrich Rebbe lost his father. So he didn't know that Minhag Avelis from the loss from the Rebbe Shmasegen, but he was around in Tafshin Beis when the Rebbe lost his mother. Otherwise, he didn't. In other words, the Rebbe's Yuman is a record of his conversations with the Friedrich Rebbe. Ubeleshein Arav, atog Freier, atog Spete, es wird arois platzen. I remember hearing those words from the Rebbe. That the Rebbe said, if the Friedrich Rebbe ever told me something, sooner or later all of Anash was going to know. I wasn't going to keep a secret. But you understand yourself that not everything goes into that category. There's kama in yonim. That in the Bechina of Rebbe le Rebbe, we'll never know what kind of conversations. So they spent 2 nights a week together for 10 years. There was something you talk about. You spilled shachmat. But what do we have no asaga beklal what's the Rebbe. Anyway, but I wanted to just say this, that the very first entry in the Rebbe's journal, the very first entry in the entire Yuman, which is printed, is Chamisha B'Tevis. Hey Tevis Tafik B'Tevis. About 3 weeks after the Chasana was Yidala Tevis. Rechen Arab. It's a month. Yidal Kislev. It's a month minus 9 days. And then 3 weeks. Nechnasti al pi akri. That's how it starts. I entered because I was called. The Rebbe walks into Friedrich Rebbe, and the Friedrich Rebbe begins, Ich hab a frischen Gris from Bruder. I have regards from your brother. Yisrael Ayeleh, was yard scientist today, label. So he says, yes, ankommen a telegram, no. You gotta tell, no. Ankommen a brief, no. Apparently label was still in Russia. So how did you get regards? He says, we were together in a dream. Friedrich Rebbe tells the Rebbe, we were together in a dream. As hat gesehen dem Taten, he saw his father, the Rebbe Rashab. Das the erste Mal in the Chasana. This is the first time he's seeing his father since the wedding. Panav Hulois, the Friedrich Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab was very happy. And he said to him, I don't remember the order, I didn't look it up this morning. I dank for den Hittel. He thanked the Friedrich Rebbe for the Hittel, for the hat. And then the Rebbe tells the Rebbe Zogazunza, the Chagav. The first time the Friedrich Rebbe put on a Streimel was to the Rebbe's Chasna. The first 9 years of the Rebbe Rayatza's Nasias, he did not wear a shtreimel, he wore a hat, a shlapper. Because there was a Yirah from the Rebbe Maharash yet. The Rebbe Maharash told the Rebbe Rashab, a shtreimel trok men nor in Lubavitch. Shtreimel on Lubavitch. So when the Rebbe left Lubavitch to Rostov in Pashas Vayera, I involved. It was 1915. That was the end. The Rebbe Rashab never wore a shtreimel after that. Until he wore a shlap, a hat. When the Rebbe, the Rayatz became Rebbe, also wore a hat. So the Friedrich Rebbe, to the Rebbe's Log, this was nice chas, and Friedrich put on a shtreimel, and he kept it. And he adds, ich hab gewollt anton dem Tatens. He said, I wanted to wear my father's. But I forgot how he words it, but he said, I couldn't. Hab ich angetan dem Seidens. The shtreimel was the Friedrich Rebbe wore. People ask me, how is it possible that the shtreimel looked so good? It was from the Rebbe Maharash. So we don't know if the pshat is that he wore that only for the chassid and lady, he bought his own shtreimel. I mean, the Polish get very nervous. It wasn't a shtreimel, it's a kopik. Ich kleid dich voneinander in die Sachen, wie Farayore stay. It doesn't mean anything. It's like a Barcelino and a Barbizia. A hitl lahin, a hitl lahen. It's called a shtreimel, fartik. But the Polish has a hoiche and a breite and a schmolle and a dicke. Everything has a different name and costs different amounts of monies. So I don't know if the pictures that we have of, there's no pictures of the Friedrich Rebbe, the Rebbe's chasna. So the shtreimel that we see in those photos, which is in the Rebbe's library, and they put them on display. If you go into the library from time to time, they have hatzagot. They put out different things. You could see the shtreimel of the Friedrich Rebbe, the shtreimel of the Rebbe Rashab, the shtreimel of the Rebbe Marash, and the Rebbe's. The Friedrich Rebbe had these nechosim. They were in his rishus. So I don't know how. Bottom line, so the Rebbe's chasna, the Friedrich Rebbe, the shtreimel of the Rebbe Marash. So in a dream, 3 weeks after the chasna, his father says to him, "Thank you for the hat." And then he says that in these dreams, and he given another dimension, there were other people, and amongst them was the Rebbe's brother, Yossi, and he was standing at a distance, and the Rebbe Rashab says, "Wer ist das? Ich kenne nicht." Who was this? I don't recognize him. You must remember the Rebbe Rashab never saw them. If the Rebbe didn't see our Rebbe, who was the oldest, he certainly didn't see Rabbi Yisrael, who was the youngest of the 3 boys. Kum ne'enter. This is all in a dream. Come close. So Rabbi Yisrael starts to come close. And there's, ich ken dir. I recognize, I know who you are. And then the Rebbe Rashab said a maimed. Medachzach, the maimed started Shcheir Aniva Novo. And the Friedrich Rebbe tells the Rebbe in a few shuris what was the teichen of the maimed. He says, ask your brother for the long version. Ask your brother for the maimed. Friedrich Rebbe. The Kodem Kol, if he had a dream, it was not in the category of Chalemis, Shavir Abedu, it was Pashta Chizayin Lai, it was Pashta even Nevuah. And he was also sure that if he saw somebody else together with him in this dream, he also had the same dream. And considering Rabbi Yisrael Leib's Madrege, and considering Rabbi Yisrael Leib's Kop, what the gedenkt, he tells him, after. I think there's nothing more meaningful in the little bit that we know about the Rebbe's brother than this little story. Then the story was, of course, he came out of Russia, labeled Shalai Leib. He joined the Rebbe in Berlin, but the Rebbe was living with the Rebbe in Berlin. And one of the stories is, apparently he was beaten up on the street by the brown shirts. They called themselves the SA. Before the SS was the SA. They beat him up because there's some kind of a rally on Alma Gemacht Azoi, and he didn't do it, or he didn't do it to Hol Kavana. They pushed him to Mazik de Beiner. And when the Rebbe moved to Paris, he also moved to Paris. But he had a very, very strong desire to go to Israel. Problem was, his papers were in Germany. He was pushed afraid. So the Rebbe Chaim Mushke said to Label, I'll go for you. And she went to Berlin, and she presented herself, I don't know whether she presented herself as a sister or a sister-in-law, because they had the same last name, Schneerson. And she came to collect his documents, and they started asking her questions about herself. Is she a Schneerson, her maiden name Schneerson, or is her married name Schneerson? She says both. And they said, and your mother's maiden name? Weiter Schneerson. So this is not possible. This is not possible. And they told her that when they're going to come to Paris, they'll look her up. And apparently when the Nazis came to Paris, they went to the address where the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin were supposedly staying, and they had left. They had left already. So she got these papers, and Yisrael Ayalei, Aliyeh, as he was called, that's our label, moved to Eretz Yisrael. In the Rebbe's and Chana's Reshimis. In the Rebbe's and Chana's Reshimis. She describes the years from the Fashikung. The Rebbe's mother describes the years that the Rebbe's father and her were fashikt in Chile, which is, it's mamish, the only thing that lives in Chile is mosquitoes. I don't understand how big Russia is. I don't think it's possible to understand how big Russia is. But it's far, 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 far away. And there was no Yidden and there was no Yiddishkeit. Nobody spoke the same language as they did. It was very, very hard. And the Rebbe's father was by himself. He didn't even have Svarim. He didn't have Svarim. Also for Intermediate. And but they had mail. He came into the house one day in Simcha Tzuma, Moidendik B'Simcha. Uns kommt am Malstoff. That Label sent them a letter that he's getting married. It was Tafshin Beis, 1942. He was in Eretz Yisrael already for a few years. And the Rebbe and Chana describes how happy Reb Leivik was to get news that he's getting married. He was not a little boy. He was past 30. He was born in Samach Vov, and this is Tafshin Beis. He was more than 35 years old. He was more than 35. Azei Vaistais. I may be off by a year, but Azei Vaistais. And they had one daughter, of course, and she was by the Rebbe many times, as we know. Anyway, so of course the end of the story is that the Rebbe kept a secret from his mother that her son had passed. And different people were involved in what Rabbi Chaskel Besser al-Hashem calls the ruse, the upnarung. That the Rebbe should know that the Rebbe's brother had passed away. So she, the Shvegerin, was living in England. I forgot her first name. So she would write letters to the Rebbe's mother and include pictures of the little girl as she was growing up. They had a young maid, and she the pictures. A Bobbe. She had one Einikal Sachakal. The Rebbe had one granddaughter. And she would write letters and send them to the President Street address. Berel Yunik used to open up the mailbox, Olav Sholem, and he would take out the envelopes. There's a way to open an envelope that's sealed that you shouldn't be able to tell. You rub an egg on it. You know, this is the secret police, the Geheimenet Paltiel. When they want to open your mail, and you should know they opened it, they use an egg, a boiled egg. It works. This somehow works. It takes off the adhesive. They would open the letter, and the Rebbe would add on the bottom of the letters a few lines in the handwriting of his brother Leib. And the Rebbe used to sign his name Leib. And then they'd put the letters back in the mailbox. And the Rebbe would get mail from Leib. Now when the Rebbe Tzachana passed away, so the Rebbe made sure Amazonish Ganvinin, right? The Rebbe passed away on Shabbos. The Rebbe Tzachana passed away on Shabbos afternoon. So before the Levaya, he instructed, I think, of Zalman Duchman not to leave the house, that people shouldn't open drawers and so on. As soon as Shiva was over, and Shiva was not Shiva, Shiva was 3.5 days, because Yom Kippur was Thursday that year. Vav Tishrei was Shabbos. So Zayin, Ches, no, Yom Kippur was Wednesday. So the Shiva was a Sunday and a Monday and a little bit of Tuesday. As soon as Shiva was over, all of the possessions that the Rebbe and Chana had were taken to the Rebbe's house on President Street and put on the 3rd floor. I heard that gifts that people had given her were given back to the gifters. If you had given, and a Memchas, the Rebbe also, all the people gave the Rebbe and Chaya, Mushka, Matanas, the Rebbe gave them back as a Matana. But otherwise, all her Nechasa remained on the 3rd floor. And since Gimel Tammuz, they went through those Nechasa, and they found these letters. And they mafadz them. I don't know if you've ever seen them. It's really, I'm sure someone will have it around. Every year around this time, you'll see a strip with maybe 10 times the Rebbe imitating the handwriting of his brother, Leib. Leib. She writes a letter, and I don't know what language she writes in. And then after her letter, the Rebbe would write in his brother's handwriting a few shuras, Leib. As the years go on, the Rebbe becomes less particular about Nochmach and the Shrift. If you look, you follow the page as it gets closer to Tafshin Chav Hey. In other words, as the years pass, Label's handwriting starts to resemble the Rebbe's handwriting a little more. The Rebbe doesn't try as hard, but you can see the Rebbe's angestrengt to imitate his brother's Ksav. This is the Rebbe's brother, right? So the Rebbe writes in his Hashimis that the Rebbe looks very approachable. It was Tafshin Yud Beis. The Rebbe was a Rebbe a little more than 1 year officially, a little more than 2 years unofficially. The Samson was very small. So Yel writes his father, the Rebbe geht herum sehr zu brachen. Und mir sagt, at the brother is back. That's how much of a secret it was. Yel was in 770. The Rebbe didn't want anybody to know because he didn't want his mother to find out. So during Shiva, they made a minyan and Gan Eden and Tachten, and there were 10 people who were invited to this minyan. They were sworn to secrecy. They're not allowed to repeat. And the Rebbe said Shiva. Every day he went to his mother with his sneakers, with his oil shoes. So Battle Eunuch painted them black because they're naturally blue. And the Rebbe would put beans, raw beans in the shoes, which would be a little bit uncomfortable. And he would go into his mother and he would sit and schmooze. And Battle Eunuch would stand on the corner by President Street. And after a minute or two, he would call. And the Rebbe would pick up the phone, hello, and the Rebbe would say, and he would leave. So during that week, his visits to his mother were abridged, shortened, because the Rebbe was an oval, and also he didn't want his mother to realize that something is amiss. And again, according to the Bechaskel Besed, who was interviewed by Jem, the Rebbe never knew. I mean, there's all kinds of shmuas, but she knew, she know. The Rebbe never knew that Label had passed away. It's taking 13 years. From Tashmid Beit to Tashmid Chavei, it's a lot of time. Tashmid Beit to Tashmid Chavei. And of course, one more nukuda is the Rebbe spoke a sikh at the end of Shiva. I once learned it here with many Yantzrik. It's a short little sikh. That was Magia the sikh, and it's a sikh about Nifat Ches Hames. It's a short little sikh about Ches Hames. Now, as long as his mother was alive, the Rebbe didn't do anything to reveal what the matzah is. The Rebbe didn't say Kaddish. Reb Zalman Duchman, he's done for the Yomit for him. He said Kaddish the whole year, and he said to us. When Reb Zalman Duchman passed away, Rabbi Yeshia Korf got that schus. I remember as a bocher, one Shabbos, he couldn't hear a chazan. And I couldn't understand. They put a chazan in his head, Shia Korf. So we all hated Shia Korf. Shia Korf at Yardside, Dafnala Light, and he was an old man, and he lived another 30 years. But that was a technical, I got 107 yards. Rabbi Shia Korf went around twice. He forgot to get off at a stop. So when he davened for the Yomid, he must have been in his 70s. He couldn't hear a word. That he was Pasha davening for the Rebbe. He davened for the Rebbe for his brother, for Leib. Anyway, and anything which is connected to the Rebbe is connected to us. Okay. Now, the machines are all ready to roll. McKenzie Lennon, yeah. Never. Rabbi side, we're learning Perek Ches. We're starting a new Perek. And this is not just a new Perek, it's a new piece of the Tanya. In other words, the Sefer shall bein in it. The Rebbe wrote a Sefer which is called Likutei Amorim. Likutei Amorim has 2 chalakim, or 3 chalakim, or 5 chalakim, depending on how you want to figure. The first chalik is called Likutei Amorim, Sefer shall bein in it. It's a collection of sayings on the Indian from Beinani. The second section is called Likutei Amorim, Shara Yichad V'Amuna. And the third section, which was added a few years later, whatever, Takuf Samach Vov, is called Likutei Amorim, Igeres HaTshuva. And then after the Stalkers of the Alter Rebbe, the children, the Bnei Agon HaMachaber, added what's called the Igeres HaKedesh and the Kuntas Acharen. I don't know if they're called Likutei Amorim, Igeres HaKedesh, Likutei Amorim, Kuntas Acharen, even though the emphasis they are Likutei Amorim, Likutei Basa Likutei. But the Tanya is called Likutei Amorim. So the Likutei Amorim Chelik Rishon, Hanika B'Shem Sefer Shel Beinanim, the Likutei Amorim Chelik Rishon, which is what we're learning, Sefer Shel Beinanim, it can divide it up into a few parts. 4 parts or 5 parts. If you divide it up into a few parts, the end of the first part was last week. We finished Perek Zayin with Nebish and Hilf. We're beginning now Perek Ches. And Perek Ches is a whole new Inyan, which is going to continue in Mitzvah Hashem until Perek Chavei. And then from Chavav till Lamed Daled will be the 3rd section of Tanya. And then from Lamed Daled till the end is the 4th, or if you want, you can divide Lamed Daled, Lamed Hey until the end into 2 parts. I'm not sure exactly where the cutoff would be. But this is the structure of the Sefer Shel Beinanim, Sefer Likutei Amorim, Anika B'Shem Sefer Shel Beinanim. So what did we learn and what are we going to? The Alter Rebbe wrote a Sefer of Avodah. Alter Rebbe wrote a Sefer of Avodah. Sefer, what do you call it? The Sefer of Musa. In other words, Alter Rebbe did not write a Sefer to teach us philosophia. Even philosophia lekis, to teach us chkira lekis. The Alter Rebbe wrote a Sefer to teach us how to come closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to be mizgaber over the Yetzer Hara, and to be a Yid who a Yid is supposed to be. That's what the Tanya is. And it's based on the Pasuk. Ki korev elach adodam miyed b'ficha v'avcha la'aseisei. Levayid heitiv eichu korev mibderech harucho k'tzara. And it's called Sefer Shal Beinanim or Beinani. What's a Beinani? He's in between. He's not a tzaddik and he's not a Rosh. But it's not Beinani in between, like in Halacha, a Beinani is in between. 50% good or 50% evil, approximately. But Beinani is in between tzaddik and in between Rosh, and what the Alter Rebbe calls in the Tanya, the Shem HaToyar. A name which is not defined by actions and judgment. It's a name that's defined by muhus, by substance, by character. What kind of human being you're dealing with. A tzaddik, it says in the Gemara, based on the pasuk, Ein leYetzer hara, shenema v'libi cholol b'kir b'kiharge b'tainis. A tzaddik has killed, has murdered his Yetzer hara. He doesn't have a Yetzer hara because he killed him b'reiv tainis. And a rasha is someone whose b'reshus libe, his heart controls him. Sometimes the rasha is controlled infrequently, sometimes the rasha is controlled more frequently, and this is the difference between one madrega of rasha and another madrega of rasha. And the Beinani is in between those two. Rabbi Miller, Chaim Miller, wrote a book on Tanya. He wrote a Gevaldim, very, very good svarim in English. His Sefer on Tanya, he calls the Beinani the in-betweener. He doesn't want to call him the intermediate, he calls him the in-betweener. It's a very, very long noun. But the word is, he wants to use a targum which brings out toichan hadav. Average. A bein is not average. A bein is in between. Intermediate is a very hard word to use because intermediate has a connotation that it's mechaber, the maila and the matas. He calls it in between. I think it's a hard way to translate the word, but it's a very realistic way. It's a very helpful way to translate what the Beinani is. In between tzaddik and in between rasha, this is the madrega of Beinani. What is a Beinani? A tzaddik is a nisht. He's not a tzaddik because he has a Yetzer hara. But a rasha he isn't either because he never listens to his Yetzer hara. So the Alter Rebbe wrote a Sefer Shel Beinanim, whereas the Alter Rebbe used to call it Beinani. The Alter Rebbe when the Alter Rebbe talked about the Tanya, so it's like Beinani, it's a Beinanim. The Alter Rebbe would call the Sefer by the word Beinani, like we have in the Sipurim from Chassidim. So the Tanya is a Sefer of Musa, a Sefer of Avodas Hashem. That means the Tanya is a Sefer that teaches how to do it. What a Beinani is one thing. How to live like a Beinani, how to be like a Beinani, be a Beinani is a totally different issue. And the Alter Rebbe at Sefer Lekutei Amarim, Sefer Shel Beinanim, for the purposes not just of describing what a Beinani is, but describing the avoid of a Beinani, what a Beinani needs to do in order to serve the Eibishter in this Madrega and in this Maimed Umatzav. That's what the Lekutei Amarim Sefer Shel Beinanim is about. No. So, let's get to the point. If the Sefer Shel Beinanim is not only telling me what a Beinani is, but the Sefer Shel Beinanim is telling me how to be a Beinani, so what are the eitzes? Take, wasn't take the eitzes. So there's many eitzes, there's a number of different eitzes. And in general, they go in two categories. The first category is to use the teva of a person of Moyach Shalt Alalev. It says in Zayisa B'Zoyar, as Moyach Shalt Alalev B'Tuldasei B'Teva Yitzir. I'll say the teva of a person. And if you remember, we learned Perikid Beis, it's a couple of years ago, but teva means nefesh habamis. The teva of a person is Moyach Shalt Alalev, and a person can use Moyach Shalt Alalev to be a Beinani. Right? There's two taichin to the word shalit. One is melucha and one is memshala. The first taich of the word shalit is the mind educates the heart. This is a higher madrega, a much higher madrega. And the second taich is Moyach Shalt Alalev. The mind controls the heart. It masters the heart. And this is a lower madrega, a second madrega. But Moyach Shalt Alalev has a few requisites. In order to be a Beinani, in the derech of Moyach Shalt Alalev, which begins from the beginning of the Tanya of a Perikid Beis, depending how you want to figure, there are a few things that have to be. Number one, everybody has a head, but it means a head that works. Number two, you have to be able to learn. Number 3, you have to be able to focus, concentrate. What's called in the culture of Chabad, his boinenus, fatifenzach, to delve deeply with your mind into an idea until you personalize it, until you make it your own. And number 4, you need a porous heart. You need leiv bosa, not leiv ha'evet. You need a vada heart. You need the kind of a heart that when the mind is going to focus on the kus, the heart will respond with avas Hashem and yiras Hashem. So moyach shalta alev is a very profound method of achieving the madrega of Beinani. It's a very tifa madrega from Beinani. It's a very comprehensive derech. It's a very realistic derech. If yesh lei me'ach b'kadkadeh, yesh lei lahav megdos and say baruch, and you can have avas Hashem and yiras Hashem. But not everybody was created that way. There are plenty of people that are called Pasha. V'anachnu kulonu b'toichem. This is the truth. Moyach shalta alev is a very high level. It's a madrega of groisach sidim, with starke kep. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not a simple thing at all. So what is a person to do if he's not intelligent enough, if he doesn't have sufficient concentration, if he doesn't know how to contemplate, or the engine of his heart does not turn over? The engine doesn't turn, it's brennt nicht auf fire. So Perek Yud Chas begins with the basic second method of Beinani, and I say the word basic on purpose, because within Moyach Shalta Alev alone there's 4 different madregas, or 5 different madregas, whatever the particulars are. So Perek Yud Chas says, after spending all of these pages in Prakim and Shiurim and weeks and months and years, explaining the Bein of Moyach Shalta Alev, we started a new discussion, which is what is a person to do if the Moyach doesn't work, if the Hizbonus doesn't work, if the Avavayir doesn't happen. So what's he supposed to do? What is she supposed to do? And Alter Rebbe gave a second eitzah. And the second eitzah is called Ava Mesuteres. Ava Mesuteres means to arouse the Pintel Yid. And Alter Rebbe asserts that arousing the Pintel Yid is easier. It's not as deep, but it's easier than the avoid of Moyach Shalat Alev. Moyach Shalat Alev is very difficult. If you have the Moyach, and you have the Chush, and you have the Lev, Alter Rebbe says, Karev, Hadavar, V'nokel, right? I showed you in the previous page, the only place in Tanya that I know where the Alter Rebbe uses the word easy is in Perek Yud Zayin, the previous Perek, that if you have the kind of Moyach, and the kind of concentration, and the kind of Regesh HaLev, that your Hizbonus is going to bear the fruit of Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, at least to a limited degree. You should be a Rabbi. It's over yourself, then you can do the Moyach Shalta Alev Beinani. But what about the rest of us? What about the people that don't have those kinds of chushim? So Alter Rebbe said you can reveal your Pintel Yid, and the Alter Rebbe holds that revealing the Pintel Yid is a gringer avoida, it's an easier avoida than the avoida of Moyach Shalta Alev. Why? Because Moyach Shalta Alev is avoida of Chabad, Chochma Bina V'das, avoida of Seichel. The avoida of revealed Ava Mesuteres is an avoida which has to do with Dimyan, which means imagination. Now the Alter Rebbe never uses the word imagination in these entire 8 prakim, but that's the pshat. I know I get into trouble with my students, and then from time to time people who are my contemporaries call me, I listen to your shiur online, and why did you say this, and what's your source? And I have to have a source for everything, and dip my fingers on ish, and I don't always have sources. But b'mitzvah sadova border, that the pshat in these 8 prakim is Alter Rebbe is not giving you a different nisbonus. It's what we call in the modern world of psychology a visualization, a hitztairos, to use your imagination. And to use your imagination, you have to be smart. You have to just have an ability to visualize, to fantasize. What are you going to be medameh? What are you going to visualize? What's going to be the fantasy? The inyan of Mesiras Nefesh, Al Kiddush Hashem, to imagine yourself, myself, I, burning in a fire of Kiddush Hashem. That's what the Alter Rebbe is going to suggest. Using the dimya, the fantasy of Mesiras Nefesh as a tool. When the Alter Rebbe says, it's a hard, giving you a hard time, he wants you to do this or that or the other, not to do this or the other. He said, if you're prepared to burn in that fire, you're prepared to control yourself. That's going to be the message, as you'll see in Perek Chavei, which is going to be in not Chavei Shavuos Mikan, but in Chavei, a number. It's going to take us a while till we finish this parsha. But what's going to happen in these 8 prakim, Alter Rebbe is going to offer us another method of Beinani, which doesn't require a seichel, intellect. All it requires is an imagination. to visualize the inyan of Mesiras Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem, and then to use that koyach to be mayach shalt alev, to control one heart from every situation they find themselves in. So we're starting a whole new time, particular time. Now, to say what I just said in other words, to repeat again the same passion Nachama, but saying it in different words. The different words goes like this, and this we all know from when the kindergarten, right? Went to Cheder, we had Malamdim, they taught us Tanya. This we all learned in Cheder. That there's a Gemara Masechta Chagiga, I think. There's a bunch of I thinks coming now, okay? That the Bishua Mechananya said, I think, that no person ever defeated me in a Dvar Chochma or a Vikuach, except for a young boy and a young girl. He used to tell two stories. How they outsmarted him. So the story with the young boy that he tells is that he came to a cross, he was on the way to a certain city, and he came to a fork in the road. You can go both directions. And both directions were leading to the town. So we saw a young Yannick, a young boy, and he said to the young boy, which path should I go on, this one or this one? So the young boy told him, this is Derech Aruch Uktzara, this is Derech Tzara Aruch. This road is long and short, this one is short and long. So B'Shua B'Chananya figured, in the Lashon HaShas, face Lashon Rishon. You know, in the Gemara you have a shaila. If a person tells you, ask a person a question, and he gives you an answer, but the first part of the answer sounds like this, second part of the answer sounds like that. So the shaila is the first thing true, and the second thing is nonsense? Or is the second thing a chazara on the Rishon? So there's in Shas three shitas. Tfeis Lashon Rishon, Tfeis Lashon Achrin, and Tfeis Afilu Lashon Achrin. From them Beider. This is pushing the Gel Locha L'Maisa. If a person tells you something, what do you believe? So Rabbi Yeshua B'Chananya decided, if he tells me long and short and long, the first word is the Yikr. Short sounds shorter than long, so he went on the short road. And he could see the town was 100 paces from where he was, very close. But between him and the town there was a swamp, and there was thorns, and there were snakes, and it wasn't shaykh to get there, even though you could see it. So he came back, and he went on the long road. It took a couple of miles, but the road was a derech slula, and he came to the town. So B'Chananya said, this little boy, if I remember correctly, I have not looked after today's shir, I'll look up the Gemaras, but it's been a while since I saw this Gemara inside. He decided, this child outsmarted me with this expression, long and short and short and long. Now, so in the Tanya, on the Shad Blettel, on the very first page of the Tanya, it says, Sefer L'Kutei Amorim, Hanika B'Shem Sefer Shabbat, Melukat Mipi Sfarim, Kadei Shei Elyon, Sefer Sfarim, Kadei Shei Elyon, Nishmas Hameid, Meyusad al Apostle, Tigare Ve'lech Adava Me'ed, B'Fich U'Bavcha L'Seisei, Levayed Heitev Eichu Karav Me'ed, B'derach Arucha Uktzara Be'ezer Hashem Yisbarach. Those words on the front page of the Tanya, Alter Rebbe wrote himself that he's going to explain Eichu Karav Me'ed, how being a Beinani is Karav Me'ed Allah Adam, in a long way, in a short way, with Eivish Yisrael. So the Mashpiyim Taich, this Losh of Derech Arucha Uktzara is from this Gemara in Chagiga. That this little boy told Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, the long road is better than the short road because the long is short and the short is long. So the Mashpiyim explain that there's two drachim and Avodas Hashem. In the derech and Avodas Hashem that you get very quickly from point A to point B. But when you reach point B, you're never really there because it's very quick, very fleeting. Al derech mashal, when you burn a piece of paper. When you burn a piece of paper, in a second you have a big flame, and then in a second it's gone. Flam fire, hislavos, that they came poiling. Excitement, which is superficial, which is menasaf al-chutz, which is skin deep, is taken short, quick, but an easy come and easy go. There's another derech, which called Aruch Okta, takes much longer to reach. But when you reach it, it's transforming. You're made into a new person based on this new derech. So the Tanya says, Alter Rebbe writes, that he's teaching us a derech of being in a Aruch Okta, long, short, meaning it's going to be very, very involved. And the Mashpiyim explain, the derech Aruch Okta, or the derech Arucha, is the first 17 prakim of Tanya. The prakim we just completed, this is the derech Arucha. That a person could be a beinani by engaging in avodah, which is going to take a lot of time and a lot of concentration, a lot of consistency, which involves moyach, shalit, ala lev. You begin with moyach, and then you continue with shalit, then you continue with ala lev. But it's a derech harucha, takes a very, very long time. But if and when a person succeeds at it, he's a chosid. He's transformed. He's an andas al bashefinish. He's a chosid. Here we're going to start what's called the derech tzara. This Perek Yud Ches is not the long way, it's the short way. As I explained to you before, long and short doesn't necessarily mean how much time it takes. Long and short means what's the nature of the avodah. The chacham, the smart person, can be a bein in using the derech harucha, moyach shalt alev, and his abundance and the rest. But this takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort, a lot of capability. Not everybody has it. But the derech tzara is shaychas l'chol echad v'achas. Every single person, the derech tzara, everybody is able to do. And the derech tzara, as I told you before, you're not using your seichel, you're using your koyach hamadam. You're not using your intellect, you're using your imagination, your power of visualization to visualize Mesiras Nefesh and use that as a tool of controlling the Yetzer Hara. Now I want to say something, derech agav. It's not in the game Perek, but I want to say it anyway. You have it in the Fidik Besiches. When I was growing up, my father would tell this to me all the time, and then when I grew up, I actually looked up the original. There was a Yid who said, Yeheisen Abeinu Moshe b'Maimin Asfardi. He was something Yeheisen, yeah? We look like on the Babich. As they talk, Chabatzke. The Rambam. The Rambam wrote many Sfarim. Amongst the Rambam's Sfarim is the Pirush HaMishnah Islam, Pirush HaMishnah. Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. The Sefer Shisha Sidrei Mishnah is an incredible Sefer. Everything is bekitzer, but it's a modern dika sefer, it's a rishi. But the Pirush HaMishnah, besides the Pirush HaMishnah, has other things in it as well. For example, the Akdama to Mishnayos. The Rambam Akdama to Mishnayos is the Yisod of the whole Torah. The evolution of Torah. It's explained much more at length in the Akdama Pirush HaMishnayos than it's explained in the Akdama of the Mishnah Torah. He talks about Nevuah, he talks about the Ishtalshus of Halacha, and then the Tanya, the Torah, then the Zikanim, and then the Nevi'im, and then Ashkar Sakdela, and the Kufas Azugas, and the Torah, and then he explains everything. Then there is the Hakdama to Perek Asiri of Sanhedrin. It's called Chelek. The Rambam has a long introduction of Perek Asiri of Sanhedrin, where he includes, amongst other things, the famous Yud Gimel Ikrei HaEmunah. The Rambam's 13 principles of faith are on the Mishnah Kol Yisrael Yesh Lev Chelek Le'elam Haba. That's where the Rambam, it's a whole sefer. The Rambam Ashfat Zogn. Amal is Akdama Sefer. Ich like no, Akdama is Akdama is Alena Sefer. But the Rambam, every word is Akdama, every word is a Sefer. But there is another place. The Rambam's Akdama to Pirkei Avos. The Rambam the Pirkei Avos is a masterpiece. Some will tell you it's the most important shit the Rambam wrote, but some other will say otherwise. And it's called the Shmeina Parakim La Rambam. I say the Shmeina Parakim. And it's like 8 Parakim. It starts off slow, and then it takes off fast, and then it overwhelms you. The Nekuda HaTechoina, the point of the entire Shmeina Parakim La Rambam is to explain what's a Chassid, and more precisely how one becomes a Chassid. It's a story. If you want to read it, get it yourself and read it. It's available today in English and in Hebrew and all the stuff. In the Shmeina Parakim, the Rambam talks about the constitution of a neshama. The Rabbi Chaim Bereshis has shitas upon shitas what a neshama is made up of. The Rambam writes in the Shmeina Parakim, even though in Mishnah Torah he seems to describe the neshama as one, in the Shmeina Parakim the Rambam writes that the neshama has 5 neshamas. 5 neshamas is one neshama. Rabbi Chaim brings different shitas. One shita is 3, one shita is 5, one shita is 1. According to the shita, that's 5. I don't remember all 5. The first is the nefesh hamaisa, the soul of action. The second is the nefesh, which has to do with the chushim, the senses. The third has to do with the nefesh, which has to do with midas, with riksha lev. The first one is nefesh hazon, the physical properties, the digestion. Second one is nefesh of the chushim, riyesh miyah tam reich and mishur. The third is the nefesh of midas. The fourth is the nefesh of dimyan. The Rambam holds that imagination is a very, very important thing. The Rambam further holds that for a person to be a Navi, especially a successful and effective Navi, he has to have a great imagination. And of course, Chas Sholem said that the imagination is the source of the Nevuah. The imagination is the tools through which the Nevuah come. And the 5th Madreg of Nefesh is the Nefesh HaSeichel, Nefesh HaSeichel. So the Rambam holds very highly of Koyach HaMadam, and Dimyan. And I was a kid growing up, my father would always tell me, you look at the Fidik and Besiches, and it's Takazeh, you see a lot of this idea of Ibertracht, to visualize, to imagine, to Mitzayah Zayin, and how helpful the Frierdiker Rebbe felt that this was. We're learning about a Chosh HaDimyan. We're learning about being a Beinani by using your imagination, to imagine, to visualize, to imagine, to picture in your mind, and use this as a tool for Avodas Hashem. Okay? So this is what's going to happen now. So I'm going to pause and let you ask questions or comments, and then we'll see what's going to happen after that. Questions or comments? We're good? So let's start reading. A Parshudis, just a few lines. Perikutchas. I wish that I explained. Beyer hated even better. Milas ma'oid. The word ma'oid. Shebe pasuk and the pasuk yikorev elach adavam eid begomer. You see, the way the Tanya works, the entire Tanya, Sefer Shal Beinanim, is based on this pasuk yikorev. But the pasuk really only comes up 3 or 4 times. The first is in the previous Perek Yud Zayin, when the Rebbe starts with Perek Yud this chapter in the pasuk in the Lacham. The second is not here. Here he just asks a question: why does it say Ma'oid? What would happen if they called it Adavar without the word Ma'oid? This pasuk is going to be explained in Chav Hei, in chapter 25, Perek Chav Hei, which is also going to start with Zero Shakos and Kol Lachdav Me'ed. The third time is Perek Lamed Hei. Those are really the 3 times. If you include the fact that our Perek is a mention of Ma'oid and then maybe Perek Aleph, it's a little more. But because the Alter Rebbe visits the pasuk a few times, each time he visits the pasuk, he's visiting a different part of the pasuk. The Mayach Shal Tal Alev, we learned in the previous Prakim, and we included Perek Yud Zayin, means the whole pasuk. Now we're focusing on the word Ma'oid, and you'll see Mr. later on in Perek Lamed Hei. We're going to focus on the word La'asoy Soy. But let's read. You have to know well. Good vision. Even a person should die. Take as Hashem. His mind is narrow from understanding Hashem. In other words, he doesn't have the seichel to understand the Lakus. That's number 1. Nor does he have the heart to contemplate, to do what we call his boniness in the greatness of Ein Seif. It's the second problem. He has no brain to learn, he has no brain to contemplate. And number 3, to arouse through this meditation fear and love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Even in the brain and the hidden resources of the heart alone, which are not fully revealed, even this is impossible. So the Alter Rebbe says we're dealing with the kind of person who cannot do Mayach Shal Talalev. Take in the previous page, we spoke of Mayach Shal Talalev, but to have Mayach Shal Talalev, you have to have Mayach, and you have to have Shalit, and you have to have Lev. Some people have Lev, but don't have Mayach and Shalit. Some people have Shalit and Mayach and Lev. And some people have Mayach and don't have Shalit and Lev. You have to have all 3. If you don't have all 3, you can't be a Beinani. So how is a person who doesn't have these gifts achieve Madregas Beinani? So the Rebbe says, nevertheless, Karav love, even to such a person, the matter is near. Hadav is saying Teira mitzvahs. Ma'oid very much. Lish Merbelah says to guard from doing Avedas and to practice mitzvahs. Kol mitzvah Teira, every single one of the mitzvah Teira without an exception. But Teira can equal to all of them. The pivot in his mouth, Rabbi in his heart. Mamish, mu'umka, the libut and depths of his heart, be'emes lamit, in absolute truth, but the chilu rechim, or some kind of fear and love, which is the concept of Ava Mitzvah. If you're not going to ask any questions or make any comments, I'm going to stop right here. Okay, we started the painting, we said Shalom Aleichem. At least we walked into this door enough that the next week we're not going to walk into the previous page. Questions or comments? Noch besser geben zu verstehen. Zulegen noch. We already explained Yikodesh. Now explain more. Why do you want to explain more? Because the word Ma'oid could have been left out. Could have left out of a Ma'oid. Zeir Gri. Zeir not. Very near. Okay? Any other questions or comments? Okay, we're going to break.